The August 1966 sun was beating down mercilessly on Morro do Vintém in Niterói when two boys decided that afternoon would be perfect for an adventure. Jorge da Costa Alves, just 18 years old, and his younger friend were hiking the steep trail in search of a lost kite, unaware that they were about to stumble upon the greatest unsolved enigma of Brazilian criminology. It was August 20th, a date that would forever be etched in the country's collective memory. The first sign that something was terribly wrong was the silence. Not the natural silence of a hot afternoon, but the kind of stillness that seems to scream danger to the most primal instincts. The boys stopped in the middle of the trail, looking at each other with the uncertainty of those who feel they've crossed an invisible line between the normal world and something far more sinister. "Look over there," whispered Jorge, pointing to a clearing a few meters ahead. "There's something strange." What they found would defy all logic, all rational explanation, all attempts at understanding that generations of investigators would attempt in the years to come. Two men lay side by side on the stony ground, impeccably dressed in dark suits that looked brand new. Their postures were almost ceremonial, as if they had deliberately laid themselves down for eternal rest. But it was their faces, or rather, their absence, that transformed the scene from mysterious to utterly disturbing. Each man wore a rudimentary mask made of lead sheets, completely covering their eyes and part of their face, as if protecting themselves from something invisible and deadly. The police arrived 2 hours later, and even the most experienced investigators found themselves confronted with something they could not categorize. Police Chief José Venancio Bittencourt, a 2-decade veteran of solving crimes in the state of Rio, stood before the bodies and, for the first time in his career, didn't know where to begin. In 20 years of policing, he would later tell reporters, "I've never seen anything remotely like this." The dead were identified as Manuel Pereira da Cruz, 32, and Miguel José Viana, 34. Both were respected electricians from the city of Campos, simple men with loving families and stable jobs. There was absolutely nothing in their previous lives that could explain how they ended up on that desolate hillside, dressed as executives and protecting themselves from a threat no one could identify. But it was the objects found alongside the bodies that would transform the case from strange to completely surreal. Arranged around the men with almost ritualistic precision were 2 clean towels, carefully folded, an empty water bottle, and a small piece of paper with a message that appeared to have been written by someone in a state of extreme agitation. The note, scrawled in nervous handwriting, simply read, 4:30 p.m., be at the designated location, 6:30 p.m., ingest capsules, after effect, protect metals, wait for signal, mask. A message was like a map to unknown territory, each word laden with hidden meaning that no one could decipher. What were the capsules? What effect was being mentioned? What kind of signal were they hoping to receive? And why on earth did they need to shield metals with lead masks? The ensuing investigation would reveal a sequence of events so bizarre that if it were fiction, it would be dismissed as implausible. Records showed that Manoel and Miguel had left Campos on the morning of August 17th, telling their families they were going to Rio de Janeiro to buy materials for work and possibly a used car. They took a considerable amount of cash, more than they would need for their supposed purchases, and promised to return the same day. But instead of returning home, the two men embarked on a journey that would lead them through a series of inexplicable purchases. In Niterói, they visited an electronics store where they purchased a strange waterproof coat and 2 towels, the same ones found next to their bodies. The salesperson would later report that they asked questions about very specific electronic equipment, devices he had never heard mentioned before. They seemed to know exactly what they were looking for, the merchant said years later. But when I asked them what they needed those things for, they simply looked at each other and changed the subject. The last time they were seen alive was at the bar on Morro do Vintém, on the afternoon of August 17th. The bartender, a simple man named João Marques, remembered them well because their behavior had been so strange that it caught his attention. They arrived around 3 in the afternoon. He would recall with a precision that suggested the memory haunted him. They only ordered mineral water and stayed there for almost 2 hours without talking much. But what struck me most was how they kept looking at their watches and then at the hill. It was as if they were waiting for something or someone. At 5 o'clock in the afternoon, Manoel and Miguel got up, paid for their drinks, and began climbing toward the top of the hill. They were never seen alive again. What happened in those final hours between the climb and the discovery of their bodies remains a complete blank in the narrative. There were no signs of a struggle, no evidence of violence, no clues as to how or why they died. Medical examinations showed that both were in good health at the time of death, with no traces of poison or drugs in their systems. It was as if they had simply decided to lie down and die, protected by their lead masks from a threat only they could see. Theories began to emerge almost immediately, each more fantastical than the last. The most popular involved UFOs, unidentified flying objects, that supposedly lured the two men into a fatal encounter. Proponents of this theory pointed to the lead masks as evidence. Lead is known for its ability to block radiation, suggesting that Manoel and Miguel were protecting themselves from some kind of alien energy. But why would two electricians from a rural town have knowledge of radiation protection? And how would they know when and where to encounter extraterrestrial beings? An alternative theory suggested secret military experiments. Brazil in the 1960s was in the midst of a military dictatorship, and rumors about classified government projects were common. Perhaps Manoel and Miguel had been recruited to participate in some tests that went tragically wrong, with authorities later covering up the incident to protect state secrets. Others speculated that they were involved in the smuggling of radioactive materials. The lead masks could indicate that they were transporting or trading dangerous substances, and the meeting on the hill was a business meeting that ended badly. There were also those who believed in supernatural explanations, religious rituals, occult practices, or spiritual forces that had exacted a terrible price for some forbidden knowledge. What made the case even more intriguing was the discovery of strange marks on the ground, around the bodies. Investigators reported impressions on the ground that suggested something heavy had landed there, leaving circular patterns that didn't correspond to any known vehicle. These marks were photographed and documented, but the official files mysteriously disappeared years later, further fueling conspiracy theories. It was as if someone was determined to erase all physical evidence of what really happened on that hill. The official investigation never reached any definitive conclusions. With no clear evidence of homicide and no obvious suspects, the case was filed as death by unknown causes. But for the families of Manoel and Miguel, there would be no closure. Their wives would spend decades searching for answers, visiting mediums, private investigators, and anyone who could shed light on their husband's fate. They were simple men, Manoel's widow said years later, tears still shining in her eyes. Honest workers who loved their families. I can't understand how they got involved in something so strange. The mystery deepened even further when similar cases began to emerge in the region. In 1981, 15 years after the original incident, 3 men were found dead under similar circumstances in an area near Morro do Vintém. They were also formally dressed and wearing improvised protective equipment, as if preparing to face some kind of radiological threat. Coincidence? Or evidence that something bigger was happening in the region? Something that continued to draw people into fatal encounters with the unknown. Years passed, but the lead masks case never lost its power to fascinate and disturb. Documentaries were produced, books were written, and amateur investigators continued to make pilgrimages to Morro do Vintém, searching for clues that experts had missed. Some brought metal detectors, others radiation measuring equipment. Photographs were taken, recordings were made, and witnesses were interviewed, but no new concrete evidence ever emerged. The hill guarded its secrets with the tenacity of a locked safe. On clear nights, locals still report sightings of strange lights in the area, moving in ways that defy conventional explanation. What makes the case of the lead masks so enduringly fascinating isn't just the bizarre elements, the masks, the cryptic note, the impossible circumstances of death. It's the way the case touches on our deepest fears about the unknown, about forces beyond our comprehension, about the possibility that there are aspects of reality that our science cannot yet explain. Manoel and Miguel were ordinary men who stumbled upon something extraordinary. Whatever they encountered atop that hill was powerful enough to make them abandon their ordinary lives and embrace a destiny no one can comprehend. What about you? You might be the key to solving this mystery. More than 50 years have passed since that fateful August afternoon, but the lead masks case still awaits its definitive solution. Somewhere, there may be a clue that went unnoticed, a connection no one has yet made, a witness who has never been heard. Do you know anyone who lived in Niterói or Campos in the 1960s? Perhaps your grandparents, older relatives, or old neighbors have fragmented memories of those days, strange conversations overheard, unusual behavior of acquaintances, or even encounters with Manoel and Miguel that were never reported to the authorities. If you enjoy true stories that defy logic and delve deep into the unknown, subscribe to the channel now. Here, each mystery is a new journey, and you're part of the investigation. Turn on the bell so you don't miss the next cases. And remember, sometimes the answer the world is looking for may be right there with you.